U.S. trade negotiator Robert Lighthizer says that a Phase 1 deal with China is, quote, totally done. And he says it will nearly double U.S. exports to China over the next 2 years. Jess Smith is live in D.C. with more, and she can tell us to what extent we can really be excited about this Phase 1 deal. Hi, Jess.
Hey there. Ambassador Lighthizer does say the deal is done. It just needs to be translated and scrubbed by lawyers. On Friday, Lighthizer told me that he expects a signing sometime in early January. He expects it to be in D.C., but we just don't have a specific date on that yet. But they're shooting for early January. Lighthizer says that China is committing to buying $32 billion more in ag goods over the next 2 years. And then they'll try to buy an additional $5 to $10 billion worth each year. Now, China, we should note, has not publicly committed to those numbers yet, but Lighthizer says in total, China is agreeing to $200 billion more in purchases over the next 2 years. That's in the ag, energy, manufacturing, and services sectors. And while some argue this Phase 1 deal doesn't go far enough, Lighthizer defended the deal on CBS this weekend.
We are right where we hope to be. Tech transfer, real commitments. IP, real specific commitments. I mean, this agreement is 86 pages long of detail. Agricultural barriers removed in many cases. Financial services opening. Currency. This is a real structural change. Is it going to solve all the problems? No. Did we expect it to? No, absolutely not.
While President Trump wants to start Phase 2 negotiations immediately, Lighthizer says he wants to see how Phase 1 goes. He wants to implement that and then look at Phase 2. He says negotiating all of the phases, getting everything done, could take years. Dan?
Jess, as you mentioned, China hasn't necessarily confirmed certain details that Lighthizer is claiming. And so right now, as we've been through so often, what we're hearing is mostly the U.S. saying, here's what China is saying it will do. And so we have to kind of take certain officials' word for it. You know, there are those who say that they won't really believe that we have a concrete deal in place until we see, say, President Trump and Xi Jinping standing there, signing a piece of paper, shaking hands. What do you make of that? How much can we really believe what we're hearing when it's only from one side?
Well, we have heard from China that there is a deal, and I think that's significant because in the past when we've heard, okay, we have this deal done, we're very close, we haven't heard from China. So the fact that China is saying there is a deal, I think, is very significant. I was in a briefing with Ambassador Lighthizer on Friday, and reporters really pushed him about, is this deal actually done? And he says, yes. He says this is done. It's 86 pages long. He says it just needs to be translated and gone through by the lawyers. So he is really insisting that it is done. And we don't expect to see a signing with President Trump and President Xi. Lighthizer told me that he thinks it's going to be on the ministerial level, so on his level at this point. That could change. He says nothing is set in stone at this point, but that's what we're watching as of right now.
Jessica, 86 pages, anything in there substantively about any sort of the sticking points that have really been the inflammatory point of these debates in the first place, that being the forced technology transfers, also intellectual property theft, or those things that will be negotiated in phases 2 and 3?
There are IP provisions in there, and there are also forced technology transfer provisions. One Lighthizer told us about was that China will no longer be able to use transferring technology as a requirement for gaining market access. And then he says there are also provisions about counterfeits and trademarks. So while we don't know the real specifics of this yet, they haven't released the full text yet. That'll be a few weeks before they do. Lighthizer insists that there are still structural issues in there, though there are a lot of things that they're going to need to do in future phases.
All right, thanks, Jess. We'll check in with you soon.
Of course.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.